Hello and welcome back to another video jam-packed with a bunch of tips for you. I kind of got carried away again with this one. In this video, I'm going to focus on two different things. One is some tips for die cut inlay, which is one of my favorite techniques, but sometimes it can be tricky. And the other is to create your own shimmer paper. The other day, I did a video showing how to use perfect pearls to create a metallic paper. I'll link to that here and below in my description. Well, today I'm going to show you how to use perfect pearls a little bit differently to create like a shimmery look. It's just another variation. I'm using some new products from Neat and Tangled today, including this really intricate heart die that you see here with all the tiny little pieces. And yes, we're going to do some die cut inlay with that, but I'm going to show you some tips that will save you time putting all those little pieces together. Now let's go ahead and create our shimmer paper that I used on these hearts. As I mentioned in my video the other day, I showed how to put down ink and then put dry perfect pearls on top to create a metallic look. Well, this is just a variation on that, but you mix it with water and this won't rub off as much. So that's one of the benefits of doing this. So let's go ahead and create some shimmer paper. I have white cardstock. Any white cardstock will work. And I'm covering it heavily with Distress ink. You can use other inks to do this, or you could even use pre-colored cardstock, just some colored cardstock for this. However, I think that because Distress ink reacts with water, it works best with Distress ink paper. Okay, so I'm going to create my own pearlized water with perfect pearls. I have a little mini mister from Ranger filled with water. Any mist bottle would work. And I'm putting in a few scoops of perfect pearl colored perfect pearls. Yes, the regular shimmer color of perfect pearls is actually called perfect pearl. That's kind of confusing. You could use other colors of perfect pearls, but I like that this one works with any color. So now I have this pearlized water in this mist bottle, and I'm going to spray from about a foot or two above down onto my paper. And you can see it gives you a nice even look. There's a few big splotches at the beginning because I didn't spray off to the side first. Recommend doing that, of course, to avoid getting those splotches. But you get this fine mist. You want to spray it pretty generously so that it absorbs all of the water, but not too much water that it pours off the side. You'll be able to tell when you do it. This time I'm using picked raspberry, and we're going to spray on that, and we'll get a pink pearlized paper. You can see how beautiful this is when I lift it up, and it gets even better as it dries. I just set it aside to dry. It absorbs that moisture pretty quickly, and you get a beautiful shimmer paper. For a soft gold look, I like to use antique linen and spray that with that same perfect pearl mist. Now you can buy perfect pearl mists already made, but I find it saves a lot of money to make your own. That little jar goes a long way, and you can keep making more as you run out. So this is like a pearlized water, and what's nice is when this dries, the pearl doesn't really rub off. You can rub your finger on it and barely any comes off. And there are a ton of things you can do with this pearlized water spray, and I'll link to some idea videos below in my YouTube description and on my blog, some completely different looks. Okay, so while that shimmer paper dries, I want to share a few general tips for die cutting, especially when you're using a super intricate die like the heart faceted die here that I'm using today. So first, if you have a die like this, sometimes it's best to use a shim to make sure that the die cuts all the way through your paper. I like this metal adapter from Memory Box. You just put this under your cutting plate, and it provides a little bit more pressure, and it makes sure that it cuts through no matter how detailed your die is. If you don't have a metal shim, just put a few extra layers of cardstock under your bottom cutting plate, and it'll give a little bit pressure to cut through. Another thing that can happen with intricate dies like this one, or dies that you've used for a very long time, is the die cut actually gets stuck in the die after you've run it through the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and run this through here, and you'll see that when it comes out the other side, the die cut is stuck inside of the die. Now that's not a big deal. You can just poke through the little holes and pop it out the other side. But sometimes this becomes a problem. All the little pieces stay behind. This is a good die, so you don't have to worry about that. But sometimes that can be a problem. So here's something you can do to keep your die cut from getting stuck in the die. Just take a dryer sheet. An inexpensive unscented dryer sheet works fine. I fold it over so I have 4 ply. You take your die and you just run it through your die cut machine a few times. It'll kind of cut that dryer sheet, but not much because the fibers kind of keep it together. But what it does is it transfers some of that coating that's on the dryer sheet that keeps your clothes smelling good and non-wrinkly or whatever. It actually puts that onto the die, which makes it release the die cut after you run through. So now I'm taking that same die, after we've run it through with the dryer sheet, I'm going to die cut some of our shimmer paper, and you'll see that the die cut basically ejects very quickly. So I just keep one of these dryer sheets on hand, and you can run dyes through it a bunch of times, not just the one time. You can do it a bunch of times and reuse it until it starts to fall apart. I happen to use good old-fashioned bounce dryer sheets because that's what we have in our house. However, you can use inexpensive ones, and supposedly it works just as good. You can also try this with wax paper. But basically what happens is the stuff that's on a dryer sheet comes off and kind of coats the dye, which helps it to release. If you use unscented, you don't have to worry about the smell, but I think the smell can be kind of nice. So this is very helpful. Now here, see, it's starting to stick again, and I want that to come out whole. So if I want to, I can go and just go ahead and die cut a few more times with the dryer sheet, and I'll be good to go once again. And again, I didn't come up with this technique, but a bunch of readers told me about it, so I gave it a try, and it does work well. So now that I've run this through with the dryer sheet, I can go back to cutting my shimmer paper, and it'll eject nicely. Now, I don't do this with many of my dyes, to be honest. I just do it with some if I'm sure I want everything to come out in one piece, or if it's a dye I've used a lot and things are starting to stick into it. So it's just a nice trick to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Okay, so now we're going to do some crazy die cut inlaying. This is a technique where all of your pieces kind of fit together like a puzzle, and you end up with a nice smooth surface. You could layer and glue these all on top of each other, but I really like the look of inlay. It's very unique. And I know a lot of people have been trying this technique. Now with something like this, where there's this intricate heart with all these tiny pieces, die cut inlaying could be intimidating, but I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you can do this technique where it won't be frustrating. There are actually more ways you can do it, but these 2 worked really well with this particular die for me to show you today. Let's get started with method 1. For this one, I am using a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding white note card where I'm going to assemble all my little die cut pieces. I'm covering this with adhesive, making sure I get all up against the edges and a lot towards the top where I'm going to assemble my heart. So you want to make sure that's covered completely with adhesive. I'm using Tombow Stamp Runner, but you can use any dry adhesive you may have. Now I have my white piece that I die cut the heart from the center, and then I trim the sides down so there's a little exposed on the sides of our note card so we can add some cardstock strips in a little bit. But let's do our heart first. I'm taking that die cut heart. This was the antique linen with the shimmer added to it with the perfect pearl mist. And I'm pressing this down, kind of fitting it right into that heart using my bone folder. And I'm making sure that all the pieces are stuck into that adhesive that's behind it. Now this is the fun part. I'm just going to take the skeleton of the heart away, leaving all the other pieces behind. I want to replace this with a different type of paper in a moment. So this is a fast way to do die cut inlay. Maybe you have a butterfly and you want all the little pieces in the center of the pattern to be a different paper. So now we need to create that gold paper for the skeleton of the heart. Now for this, I created my own glitter paper using some glitter gold embossing powder. I have white cardstock here. I'm covering a big area of it with some Versamark. I'm adding some Wow Gold glitter embossing powder, and I'm going to heat set that. And I'll end up with a gold glitter paper that has a lot of shine to it, but the glitter doesn't rub off with this heat embossing. It doesn't rub off at all. So you can buy gold glitter paper, but it really gets expensive after a while if you use a ton of it. It's actually more cost effective to create your own like this. And I'll keep the little extra pieces on hand so I can die cut little things whenever I need some. Okay, so now from this, I die cut that heart and I popped all the little pieces out, and I'm putting this right back in to our die cut inlay piece. And that adhesive is still under there, so it just pops right in and it'll stay put there. And now we have this beautiful die cut inlay that looks like a puzzle piece all put together, but we didn't have to do each of those little pieces individually. Okay, so for the sides, remember there's still some adhesive exposed there. So I put down a real thin strip of black cardstock, and then I also cut some of that glitter paper that I made out of embossing powder, cut 2 strips from that to put on both sides of this note card. So now the front of this note card is completely smooth with all the pieces inlaid into each other. You could just layer these on top of each other if you wanted to, but there's something really eye-catching about it all put together in an inlay look. Neat and Tangled also has a stamp set that matches this die, and there is a sentiment on it that says you have a heart of gold, and I thought that was perfect on this card. Stamping that with black VersaFine ink. A lot of people ask why I don't use VersaFine more often. That's because it stays wet for a little bit, and I tend to smudge it, but it does give great results. So I heat set it here before I touched it. I also die cut little tiny hearts from Simon Says Stamp. You can see the die over there to the left. Adhered those onto the heart, and added some Wink of Stella shimmer, and here I'm putting some glossy accents over the hearts, and that will really accentuate that shimmer on the heart, and it ties together with all the shimmer that we have going on in the card here. I just can't get enough of this inlay look and also all the shimmer on this card. Now I did the exact same technique for the other card example that's a similar design, but I used the abandoned coral and picked raspberry shimmer paper that I created at the beginning of this video. Okay, so now we're on method number 2 for die cut inlay. This is just one of many ways you can do this technique. This one worked well because I wanted to do multiple colors of paper inside of that heart. So I wanted different pieces, but I didn't want to do each of those individually. So I'm starting by gluing down a black skeleton of this heart onto some white cardstock. So you can see I've already popped all the pieces out of the black. I'm putting it onto some Stick It double-sided adhesive. I'm just going to press that firmly and cut around the edge. You could put adhesive on the back of this die cut piece any way you want. You could use liquid adhesive, dry adhesive, double-sided adhesive like I'm doing here. Whatever works best for you. I thought this worked pretty well. Now I'm just going to go ahead and trim away the sides, and when I peel this off, I'll have adhesive along this entire back of this die cut. So I'm going ahead and gluing this onto a piece of white cardstock. I'm not real sure where I'm going with the card design at this point, so I'm just gluing it towards the top of a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece. So I'm going to press that down with the Stick It double-sided adhesive. You really have to press it down with a bone folder or your fingernail to ensure that it stays put. Okay, so now I'm going with a liquid adhesive. I chose Glossy Accents, and I'm putting adhesive in all the places where I want my first color inlay to be. So now I have my first color, which is pink. I'm going to lay that down over it and press each piece that I want into that liquid adhesive. So I'm just going to pop it down, and it will stick to the adhesive that is underneath. This really saves a lot of time instead of doing each of those individually. Now you can see the advantage of using that dryer sheet earlier to make sure all these little pieces stay put inside of each of these colorful hearts that I've created. So now I've added some liquid adhesive to the little areas where I want orange to be. Put my orange die cut over it. I'm going to press down with my bone folder to pop each of those into place. And when I peel this away, they'll all be in the correct spot. Some of them might not stick and you just need to put it back and press again, but it works most of the time, and it saves so much time than having to go through and figure out which piece goes where and doing them each individually. So I repeated this again. This time is some shimmer paper I made with squeezed lemonade distress ink and some of that pearlized water. Put that on top, and I press each piece in. Now I know a lot of you would think that this takes too much time to do this technique, the die cut inlay technique, but I definitely think it's worth it. And I'm not doing any coloring with Copic markers or anything, so really it doesn't take that much more time than other techniques I've tried. Now in this example, some of the pieces didn't stick down, so I just put it right back and press those down, and this time they'll stick. So I repeated this for some of the green color that I created with the Twisted Citron Distress Ink, and then this final one was the Mermaid Lagoon blue color. And there we have a complete die cut inlay, and I didn't have to do each of one of those individually. Again, you want to rub it with your bone folder so you can be sure that they all stay put. Now I have a white piece with that heart cut from the center that we created earlier in the video, and I'm going to put this around our heart so that this is one continuous die cut inlay piece. And I'll trim this down and put it onto a small black note card. I decided I wanted this to have a little bit different design than the ones from earlier in this video. I also white heat embossed the sentiment "You're a Gem" along a black strip of pearlized paper that I created. So just a little bit of a different design using the same die and a little bit different die cut inlay technique. So there I have some ideas for creating shimmer paper and doing die cut inlay. I hope these are helpful to you. If you're interested in the products, I always link below to several sources in my YouTube description or over on my blog where there's lots of exciting things happening, including a blog hop and a giveaway. Hope to see you there and again at a video here soon. Thanks for watching.